Hey guys, it's Neil here. I hope you all are doing well today. Today we're going to create a project where we're going to upload a file. It's going to be a full stack project where we have React, Express, and MySQL um, with the tech stack, and then I'm going to show you guys a little demo of how this is working. So this component right here, it has a button for the accepted file types. So right now we're just going to have some image file types and then some Word documents. And I'm going to go ahead and choose file. And then I just have some sample images here. Here's a picture of some of my dogs. My dogs. And then some that I downloaded from Pexels, and so that we can have some tests. So now if you see here, I uploaded the file and it said the file was uploaded successfully, and that's really it to the project. So I'll show you guys what's going on in the backend. Let me go here. I have this image directory, and then if you see here, there's a unique file name that gets created for this, and it gets stored in this image directory in our server side. And then I'll show you guys what that looks like in our DB. So I have this uploaded file table that has some file properties that we might need for, any scenarios, use cases. So if you see here, we have the file ID, the file name, the original file name that is uploaded by the user, and then the unique file name that we create that will be tracked by the server. And then the file size and file extension. So it's a simple project, and in this tutorial, I'm just going to show you how to upload the file. We're not going to do anything with the file yet in this project, but future projects will continue on and add and see what we can do with this uploaded file. Maybe download it, do other things with it. We'll see. So yeah, let's jump right into VS Code and let's get started. Alright guys, so I have VS Code open here. I have created a empty folder called file uploading. Let's go ahead and install React. So we're going to be using TypeScript with the front end and also the back end. So hopefully you guys are down for that. I'm going to open up the terminal and I'm going to create this React app with TypeScript template. And one thing before I do that, we need to set up our folders here. So I'm going to set up a root folder. Inside the root folder, I'm going to have a client folder, and then I'm also going to have a server folder. So we're going to cd into the root, and then now we're going to cd into the client as well, and now we'll create this React app inside there. So we'll say dot because we want it just directly in the client folder, and then we're going to do template TypeScript, and we will let that install. And I also wanted to mention we're going to be using a React CSS framework called Chakra UI. It's really cool. That was my first time using it, so we're going to be using this as well. And we'll get this installed. Okay, so what did it not like here? Oh, did it create? I think it created the server folder. Oh man, I hate when it does this. Let me open this up in the File Explorer. Yeah, let's fix this. Alrighty, there we go. So now let's do this. We'll let that install, and then we're going to be also using these commands. And then for TypeScript, we're going to need to add the types for this. So I'll let this finish downloading, and then we'll install Chakra UI. Alright, so now we have React set up with TypeScript, and everything is installed. I'm going to go ahead, I just went to chakraui.com. I can also post this in the description. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this because it's installing quite a bit of packages. So I'm just going to do Shift Insert to paste, and then yep, let's install that as well. While that's installing, let's go ahead and, so we have our TS config, so everything is set up with TypeScript. I'm going to, remove some of this boilerplate. So I don't want main app.tsx. I don't want the CSS file either. We will keep the index.tsx in the CSS file. And then I'll remove this logo. I don't really care about any of this, so. And then in the public HTML, I'm going to, let's see here. Don't need the icon. Don't need any of this. For the title, let's just put uploading a file. Okay. You can keep these comments if you want. I'm just going to delete them. Alright, so let's go ahead and delete these PNGs. I'm going to delete that. Okay. And yep, that should be it. And looks like Chakra UI installed, and we do have that set up. Perfect. So that should be all that we need. Let's go ahead and set up our components now, and then we'll start our dev server. So on our index.ts, so it's going to throw an error saying, you don't have app. So I'm going to create a components directory. So here under source, I'm going to create a directory called components. And then inside here, we will have a main.tsx. Okay, so I'm just going to do this, create, and then export this. All right, and then just have a return with a couple of divs for now. And then this will be our entry point. So I'm going to do main from components main. Okay, so now inside of our main, I'm just going to go ahead and start the dev server. So we're just going to do npm run start. Okay, so while that is starting up, we need to set some things up with the Chakra UI library, and let's do some importing here. So I'm going to import from the, okay, let's do this. Chakra UI React, and we need to have this Chakra provider, and then this will be the parent. I believe for this project we actually might not even need it, but that's okay. This is for like providing any like global state path down to your components from the Chakra provider. So it's really actually not needed, but we can just leave it there. And then, so now we have our dev servers started. I'm just going to make sure that it's working. Oh, it's compiling. Okay, don't know why it's taking so long to compile. Okay, let me do this. Okay, I don't know why that's taking so long. I'm going to go ahead and, there we go. There we go, there's test. So let's work on the file upload component, because this is really it for the main component since it's the entry point. I'm going to create a new file here, new file called fileupload.tsx. All right, so let's create our function here called file upload. Export default, file upload. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and import the Chakra UI library. Okay, and for now we'll just leave it empty. And let's see here. What are we going to do? The first thing, we need to kind of create this look right here. So in the Chakra UI, if you see the guides, I believe, or docs, let's go to docs. And so we're going to be using this layout component called box. It's really just like a container that you can use. So if you guys haven't used Chakra, it's okay. You guys can also learn it as we go. So I'm going to have this box, and inside of this box, we are going to have a text here for upload a component. So I need to import box. I'm going to also import text, and we're also going to be using Flexbox here. All right, so inside of the box, we're going to do text, and then we're going to say upload a document. And I need to now, let's include this inside the main. So I'm just going to do a quick import. Cool. So we have uploaded document, and now let's get this kind of styling going. So in the box, we're going to set a width to 50%, and then that will minimize that, and then we're going to center that using, so M is for margin, and then we're going to do top and bottom 100 pixels, so we're going to push it down, and then left and right will be auto so that it gets centered. And then we're also going to add some padding to push all the inner elements inside a little bit. And then we're also going to add this shadow component for box shadow, and we're going to just give this a default of base. Cool. So now you guys can see how that looks there. And now for the text, let's give this a font size of 2XL. Let me minimize the left pane here. Okay, so that's bigger, and let's also add a margin bottom of 4 so that we can push down everything below that a little bit. Okay, and then after that we have this accepted file types button. So we have this button here, and then it's going to just say accepted file types. Oh, I need to import that. All right, so let's add some styling there. Well, button is defined. Okay. So this size, we're going to give it as small. And then we're going to set the color scheme. There's quite a bit of options, but I'm going to do green. I really like Chakra UI because a lot of its defaults will work for you. And there's also ways you can customize it as well. So I really like that. So now what we're going to do is using Flex, we'll center this. But let's add our last one here, which is going to be the actual uploading part input. So I'm going to import a input here. And then below this button, we're going to have a input. So for this input, we're going to have a file type. A type of file. All right, so that we know that we're uploading files. Okay. And then we're going to set the variant as unstyled. All right, to get rid of those borders. And then we'll just have it on change. Okay, so we're going to wrap this input inside of a box component so that it has its own spacing. Okay, so I'm just going to paste that in here. Alrighty. So now for the box, what I'm going to add here is a, let's see, a margin top. And let's just set that as 10. Cool, so that it has some spacing. And now let's do the flex component. Let's wrap everything inside of flex. Okay, so now it's probably going to be all in one line. Yep. So what we need to do here, we can set the direction to column. And that'll work. And then we're going to do align items center. So that way the widths are respected and that they don't go full like that you saw before. And then now, let's see, we probably need to add some margin bottom. There we go. Just wanted some spacing here. All right. So what is the next thing? I'm going to, so if you see here, this input here isn't really centered. And it just has to do with like how the input is not, I think the width of it is much longer. Let's just look at that real fast so I can. Yeah, so if you see, it is centered, but the contents inside of it. So if I try to do, what is it, text align here, let's see if that works. Yeah, I want this to be centered, but it's not. It's like left align. I'm going to give one more quick try here. Don't know if that will work. Yeah, it won't work. I'm going to have to do a margin left of 20 to kind of give it that centered feel. And I'm going to actually increase that a little bit. Oh, did that make it? Okay. Yeah, that's better. I think I can do 25. Why is it doing that? Let's do this. We can explicitly give it pixels. Okay, let's just do 24. That seemed to have worked. That looks good. All right, so it looks like we have our components set up pretty similar, I believe. Just looks a little different. That's okay. Now, that is it for the component. What we're going to work on is this accepted file types modal. Chakra, we have a modal component that we can use. Let me just search for it. So let's see. Yeah, open modal. Yep, we're going to be using this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a common directory. I'm going to create a generic modal component on top of the Chakra UI modal component so that we don't have to keep creating modal components everywhere. Alrighty, so I'm going to import from Chakra. I'm going to do modal, and I'm going to give this a alias of Chakra modal because our component name is also going to be modal. I'm going to do Modal Overlay. Modal, it's quite a bit here. Content, header, footer, and then body, and then just one more, close button. Okay, create this function. Let's do the export on this. All right, so let's create this generic modal. And now we can kind of start using TypeScript because we haven't really been using the benefits of that. We're going to create an interface for the props here, and I'm just going to call it modal. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give this a title of string. And then we are going to also have an isOpen state. So this will be a function that returns void. We're also, oh, sorry, not isOpen. For isOpen, it won't be a function. It will be a Boolean. We'll have a onClose method. And if you want to see I'm just getting this honestly from here. There is some of the props. If you go to the bottom, yeah, if you see here, you can see what props are, that you can pass in. So I just picked the ones that I would thought were necessary. So onClose will be a method that returns void. We'll have the body. So this can be a JSX element or a string. Then we'll also have a footer. Keep that as optional as JSX element or a string. And I'm also going to keep the title as optional too. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is destructure this and set this type to as modal. So we'll have title, onClose, is open, body, and footer. Okay, so now for the JSX, what I'm going to do here is do Chakra modal, and then it needs some properties passed down. So we're going to have is open, and then we're going to have onClose. So this will be onClose, and then we're going to have scroll behavior inside, so that if there's any overflow, the overflow will happen, the scroll would appear here inside this. Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to have this modal overlay, and it's just going to be independent like that. And then we'll have this modal content, which will be a wrapper. And then inside the header, we will set the title. Okay, and then the close button, we'll have the close button as well. And then we'll have the modal body. And then we'll have the footer. So if you guys see here, this component will be completely reusable for any other components that want to implement a modal. Could you imagine having to keep adding this inside of your, other components, like your file upload, for example? You'd have to have it somewhere here. This whole thing is just too much. Alrighty, that looks good to me. So now the accepted file types, we are going to have that modal component just anywhere. We'll just have it inside the box. Doesn't matter, it's going to be an overlay. So now what we're going to do is create a component called the accepted file types modal. Alrighty. So I'm going to import modal from, so we're going to do common modal. Accepted file types modal return, and then export. Okay, so we have the modal here. So it needs a couple things. So we're going to need some props here as well. And I'm going to create an interface for that. I'm just going to call it props. And what we really need here is to keep track of that state. So whether to keep it open or not. So is open is going to be a Boolean. And then onClose will be a function. Basically your setter from useState. Okay, so I'm going to do this. Set it to props. And then have is open and onClose. So now for the modal, We'll have the is open, and then the on close, and then we'll have the title set as accepted file types, and then we'll have the body. So what I'm going to do here is keep track of this in an array. I'm going to for the file types. So I'm going to keep this as an array of accepted file types. I'm going to keep it as a string of array of string elements. So I'm going to do JPEG, PNG, docx, and then doc. And then what we can do here is just do accepted file types dot join, and then keep a comma space between them. Simple enough. And if you guys wanted to do more elaborate, inside of here where it's like more styled, this is probably not best, but more styling, you could definitely add some JSX to the body. So, and for some reason, I did make title as optional. Now that I think about it, that would kind of look awkward. So I'm going to remove the optional from that. Okay. Cool. So we have that, and we can directly now just keep that inside of our file upload. So I'm going to do a quick import. Accepted file types, modal from, let's see, we have a, yep. Accepted file types modal, and then we're going to we're going to import the use state hook from React. And then we will have some use state here. And we're going to give this a type of Boolean, set the default to false. All right. So now we're going to say is file types modal open, and then have a setter as is file types modal open. The reason why I'm being very specific with the naming is if we have another modal for any other use case, I don't want to give this a generic name as is modal open. It'll be hard to expand on it afterwards, so we can give more specific variable names for it. So is open will be is file types modal open, and then on close, all we're going to do here is provided a method. So we're going to do this. Set is modal file types modal open, set that to false. Okay, cool. So now what we need to do is add a on click to the button here. And then we're just going to do set is file types modal open to true. All right, so let's give that a try. Cool. Perfect. Pretty easy. Okay, so now let's get on to the fun stuff. Let's work on the file uploading, okay? So right now it will work with files. So yeah, so we have that, okay? And what we're going to do here for the input is we're going to have basically an on change event. So anytime the value gets changed here, where anytime basically they click on something, will trigger a method. So we're going to do const handle file upload. And we'll be expecting the event here. And so this will be async. because we'll be basically doing an API call to our backend to basically upload the file. So we're gonna get the element, and it's gonna be of type HTML input element. Okay, so now on the input, what we'll have here is an onChange. So we'll do onChange. We'll be expecting the event. So I'm going to give this a type of synthetic event. Handle file upload. And then we're going to pass in the current target here. And we're going to set that as HTML, the type, basically. HTML input element. And should be lowercase like that. Cool. So now let's see what that looks like. I'm just going to do a console.log for you guys so you guys can see what we're working with here. All right, so I'm going to do console.log element. And let me pin this in the browser. So all you see here is just the actual input element. All right, so now what we can do here is actually access quite a bit of the stuff within the element. So we want to access the files. So let's see what that looks like. So let's do this. And you see here, we get the file list object here. And then inside the file list, we will have the name, the size, and the type. Okay, cool. So that's what we want exactly. And let's work with that. So let's set that to a variable. We're going to do file as type as file list. We're going to do elements.files. Okay. And this is going to be a file list or null. Okay, cool. So is this actually giving any error? Yeah, no, it's not. So what we need to do now is actually, first thing you know, if you see my other tutorials, I always like to include the validations. So let's go ahead and do that here. I'm going to create a folder in the source called validators. And then we're going to have two types of validators, one for the file types and then the file size. So I'm going to call this document file size validator .ts. And then we're going to create another one called file type validator .ts. So document file size, I'm going to create a class for this. Document file size validator. And then I'm going to create some private properties. So file size, we're going to be working with bytes here because this size is explicitly in bytes. Going to set that to a type of number. And then I'm going to set this max file size in bytes. So we're going to set a max file size, and we're going to set that to a number of 20 megabytes. And what I did here, I wanted to get the conversion, so I literally just Googled this and came across this website. So this is a number we're going to work with. Alrighty. So what we're going to do now is let's create the validation method and the constructor. So we'll have the constructor. We need to pass in the file size and then set the file size in bytes to file size. And then we're going to create a method here called validate file size. Boolean. So it'll return a Boolean type. And then all we're going to do here is say file size in bytes less than or equal to max file size in bytes. And then I'm also going to create a method here called getErrorMessage. This won't always be needed, so I created a new method. It makes sense to do that in my opinion, that because we won't always be returning this, and I don't want to create a union type for that. So I'm going to say maximum file size accepted is 20 MB. Okay. So before we get into the accepted file types modal, or sorry, not that one, the other validator, let's give this a try. And whoops. Let me do that. Okay. Let me export this. What does it not like about this? Okay. Document file size validator. Let's go ahead and import that. One second. So this validator will be used inside of a service. I don't want to actually explicitly use this inside the component. So I'm going to create a service directory. I really want to keep all the logic away from the component and keep it inside our service. So I'm going to create a file validator service.ts. Okay. And what we're going to do here, so we did the file size one, right? So I'm going to just create some methods here called validate file size. I'm going to pass in the file size. This will be returning a type of promise. And then we're going to have a interface that we create for a response for the validations. So I'm going to say validator response is valid is going to be Boolean. Error message will be string. So the promise return type will be validator response. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use something, I'm going to use a dynamic import here since we're able to. That's something I've never really used, but I was just thinking validation service got really big and we just kept importing these validator files but they weren't even being used. So I was just thinking, like, what if we just imported them on the fly? Something interesting. Let me know your guys' thoughts on that, if that's overkill or that's pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and try do that in this tutorial. Documents file size validator. So we're going to use the await syntax, and we're going to import validators, document file size validator. Okay, so since we're working with a class, we need to import this default. Okay, so now we'll have the class directly. Oh, okay, I see what it did. So what it did was it wrapped this import inside of this parentheses, so that once this gets returned, we have access to the default method. Cool. So now we're going to have the validator and set that to the new, I'll create a new instance of this document file size validator. And then it's expecting a file size. Cool. So now we're going to create a variable called isValid, and we're going to say validator dot validate file size. Now all we need to do here is valid, and then that returns a Boolean. So the error message will be, if is valid is true, then we won't return. It's just an empty string. Otherwise, let's get that error message from the validator. This makes it really easy so that in the future, I don't know, let's say you want to change that error message. Imagine if you had to go back in each and every place and change it. Now we could just have to change it in one file and it will get reflected everywhere. So those are some of my thoughts on that. Okay, so I'm going to export this validate file size. Now let's create our other file type validator. Let's do a test on this actually. So what we can do is just hopefully you guys have a file that's larger than 20 MB. I actually had some difficulty finding that, but I was lucky enough I just pretty much recorded a video and uploaded it to Google Photos and then just downloaded it. And I also had some PowerPoint that was way larger than 20 MB for some reason. Okay, so I'm going to do valid file size. And what we're going to do here is import the file service. Sorry, file validator service. Now what we're going to do here is, sorry, so it won't be like that. We're going to import that specific method from it. So await file size, okay, because it's an async function, and we're going to pass in the file dot size like that. Okay, so file list is not assignable. Okay, because we're counting for not null. In this case, we should. Okay, so so the type is inferred from this alone. What we're going to need to do, if file is equal to null, then none of our further code should be even thought of. We need to return. And what we can do is probably return some kind of toast saying invalid file type or something like that. We can implement that later. But for now, we'll leave it as that. We will implement some error messaging just here in a little bit for this validation, so we can have that here as well. Okay, so now valid file size will be a type of validator response, so that's inferred. If it's inferred, so in TypeScript we could do that, but then we have to import that and set the models for the interfaces. I'm good. I don't want to do all of that for this tutorial. Okay, so didn't like something. File type validator. Okay, got it, because we haven't done anything with it. Great, so let me just delete it for now. Also, I see some warnings here about the modal is already defined. So I think it's just a warning. It should be fine. It just be, I think TypeScript, even though we shouldn't run into any issues with it. It's just because Chakra UI already has a command and call modal, so that's probably why it's doing that, giving us that warning. All right, so what we're going to do is check here. If valid files, if valid file size that is valid. Okay, we don't care about if it's valid. We care about if it's not valid. So we need to set some kind of error message to be displayed. And what we're going to do is call useState. Okay, so we're going to keep this as a string. And we're going to say, let's see, form error, upload form error, set upload form error. And then what we're going to do is output that somewhere. Let's see, we want to output that right below, right in between here, right above the choose file. That makes the most sense to me. Oh, let me fix that. And then, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to say if, what did I call this? Form error or something? Upload form error. So if that contains any type of, you know what we can do actually? We can use this. We'll have text and we'll just say upload form error. And then we'll add some margin top and make this color as red. So if you're wondering what I did here, this and, what the cool thing about this is in JavaScript, if this is true, since this is JSX, this would only get rendered if this is true. If this is false, this won't get rendered. So let's give that a test and we'll see that that works. Alrighty. So I can just save that. And if you see there, it's not getting rendered. We are going to now try that. So we're going to do set upload form error. And we're going to just say valid file size dot get error, dot error message. Okay, so let's give this a try. I have this PowerPoint and okay, cool. There we go. That is our error messaging. And one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say if upload form error, basically if it contains some error and valid file size is valid, then I'm going to just reset this to reset it basically, so that the next time if the user uploads something valid, it will disappear. All right, cool. Now let's do the other one. So let's create that one again. It's going to be the file type validator. Okay, so this is also going to just be a class. Pretty similar to what we had for the file size. File type validator, private, file type. And then I'm going to leave this up to whoever is using this validator to input the valid file types. And this will be a array of strings. We'll have the constructor, file type, string, and then valid types. Okay, so we're going to set that to file type. This valid types equal to valid type. Let's change that to types. I just want to explain why I'm doing this approach instead of passing in these params in the functions itself. If there's multiple functions that need access to the file type, I don't want to keep passing that in from the caller. I'd rather just have the class have access to it, and then whatever methods need to, access it, they can access that data. Let me know what you guys think about that, what you guys prefer. So this validate file type. So all this would do is valid file types. We're going to use that includes method because it's perfect for this. It will return a Boolean. Get error message. And then we can say this dot file type is not an accepted file type. Cool. And then let's export this. Okay, so now we can just simply add this in here. We're going to do validate file type. So this will take in the file extension. I'm going to keep this as file type. And yeah, that's really what we're passing, is just a file extension. The concept, you guys can keep whatever you want. I just kept it as file type. I might switch back and forth between extension and file type, but I will try to keep it consistent. And then this will return a promise of type validator response. Okay, so file type validator. We're going to do await import file type validator. We're going to bring in the default const validator file type validator. Okay, and we're going to pass in the file type. And then what we can do inside the service is we can create an array of file types. Not sure if I really like that idea, but it's okay for this tutorial. I was just thinking, like, if you have multiple arrays for different scenario use cases, like it could be documents, you could also have a videos file type. That would be completely separate. So maybe it would be better to keep it in some other common directory file. But for now, it's okay. We can keep it here. PNG, doc, and docx. File types. Okay, so now what we need to do is pretty much the same thing here. So I want to do is valid validator dot validate file type, return basically this. And then let's export this. So import it here. And then validate valid file type. Await this, validate file type. Type. Yeah, I believe that I might actually have to grab the extension myself, I believe. Yeah, I'll have to grab, I believe I'll have to grab, what is this type? One second, let me see this. Let me just console.log file. Let's do, okay, yeah, let's do this. Okay, let's console.log it after. Okay, let's do this. Maybe, yeah, cool. So I'm just gonna try this. Okay, I see. So we could actually use these types. These are called, I believe, MIME types. But in this case, I want to just validate the extension. So with that being said, what I want to do is I want to create a method that will get me the file extension. So what we'll do is we'll create a file service for that. So I'm going to create a file service.ts, and now that'll be its own class as well. So let's do this. Class file service. Let's export this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is create a static method called getFileExtension, because I don't want to have to create an instance for it each time. And this will just take in a file name, return a string. I would actually like to work with enums here. This would be a great use case for it, but it's alright. This will work as well. Not here specifically, I meant in the validator. But this includes method will work as just fine as well. Okay, so we'll say const file names. What we're gonna do is we're gonna use a split method, and this will return an array of strings. File name dot split. Now you could potentially have multiple. I think I actually have a file like that. Yeah. So this resume file, it has multiple dots in it. Oops. So it has multiple dots in it, and we want to grab the last part of it. Okay. So you can imagine whenever we split this, it would be Neil, resume, docx, and PDF as string elements inside of the array, and we want to grab the last one. So I don't know, for some reason, if they had no extension, I think I would probably want to throw in return empty string. Now I wonder if you can actually upload a file without let's see. Okay, the extension will always be a part of the file name, so that's good. But for any reason, if the length of this is 0, let's return an empty string. Otherwise, we're just going to return file names and then access the last part of the array doing that. Okay, cool. So what I want to do here is say, well, we need to import this. Import file service. Do I want to make this? Yeah. File service from service file service. Alrighty, so I can say file service dot get file extension dot name. Alrighty. So now we can say if valid file type dot is valid. Okay, if that's false, set the upload form error to valid file valid file type dot error message. Okay, cool. So now we are done with our validator. So let's see, if I wanted to upload a PDF, it would say PDF is not an accepted file type. Perfect. Okay, so now let's get to the actual fun part. Now let's work on setting up our file API endpoint so that we can start getting our backend working. Okay. So I'm going to create a private property here called file, and it's going to be of type file. This would include all the properties that we need that basically come from here. This right itself. Basically, it comes from the inside the file list is of type file, basically, yeah. We'll add a constructor, file type, this.file is equal to file. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to create form data. So I'm going to say get form data, and I'm going to create a form data object called form data, and then we're going to do form data dot append. We're going to call this file, and I'm going to simply have this file. So, and then we're just going to return form data. Now, if you see what's important inside this file, let's look at the properties. So if you see here, we have all these things. We want this array buffer, especially. I believe, yeah. So this buffer will contain the binary data that we need to send to our backend. That's what the contents of the file actually are. And then, of course, everything else will have name, size, everything else. Cool. Alrighty, so now, once we have that form data, what we'll do is in our file upload component, we are going to create a new instance of this file service. File service, pass in the file. Okay, so what I'm going to do actually is make this private because the component won't really care about this. What it does care about having is this one method called upload file. And we're going to make this async because this is going to make an API call. And we're going to have this return a promise. And let's create a response here of what we can expect. So we will have a upload file response of success of type Boolean, and then a message if there's an error of type string. Really all we need is just a true or false. Okay, so we're going to do upload file response. We're going to create a so what we're going to do is call the fetch. We're going to make a fetch call, but really we don't have the backend set up, but we can go ahead and just set that up. So what we're going to do is say await fetch, and forget about the URL for now because we don't know what that will look like yet. Inside the options object, we're going to set the method as post, and then we're in the body, we're going to say this.getFormData. And we're not going to set a content type explicitly here. We're going to let the fetch method do that because this will be not your JSON content type. We'll see what that is whenever we make the API call. So let's do that let's leave that for now, okay? And then now this is expecting some kind of return. We'll just return true and message empty for now. Okay guys, so that is it for our front end for now. We'll just have to modify this upload file, and we're going to add in some toast here for whenever the file is successfully uploaded or if there's an error. So now let's jump into our backend. So I'm going to stop this server, and now we'll come back and start on the backend. All right, so we'll get that set up. All right, guys, so let's set up our backend now. I CD'd out of our client folder, and now I'm into the server folder now. So we're gonna do npm init -y. Okay, So now we have our package.json. Let's go ahead and install a lot of this stuff that we need. So let's install Up Our Dependencies. So I'm going to do npm. So we're going to do express cores.env MySQL, and we're going to use this package called Multer. I hope I pronounced that right. This is a middleware library that we can use for, if you guys remember from the front end, in the file service, we have this form data. So if you remember, I told you the content type would be set by fetch, and this is what it's used for, to handle multi-part form data, since it's not really directly built into Express itself, so we have to use that library. We're going to use UUID for generating unique file names, and I believe that's it. So now if you see in our package.json, we have that. So now we're going to set up TypeScript. So we're going to do npm install dev dependency TypeScript. We're going to also install ts node. We're going to install nodemon concurrently. Let's see what else. And we need to install all the types. So for the packages that we have here. So I'll do that after. Cool. So we have our dev dependencies. Now let's just quickly install our types that we need. So we will have cores, express, MySQL, node, UUID, and that should be it. Oh, there was actually one more. There's one we need for Multer Library. Let's just do that real fast. Okay, cool. So now we have our packages set up. I'm going to change the entry point here to main. I'm going to create a app.ts file. And what we're going to have in here is just our basic setup. So we're going to try importing Express from from Express. Now let's see if this will actually let us. Cool. And then we're going to also import cores from cores. And 1 second, I don't even have an sorry. So I need to create a tsconfig file. So if I remember this correctly, I don't know if that's, okay, yep, that's right, tsc-init. I'm going to just go ahead and delete all this, just a lot of stuff. Now inside the compiler options, what we're going to have is pretty simple. Allow synthetic default imports set to true. Target ES6, we can simply just have that. Module, common, do it like this. I believe this root, I'm just going to do that. This is nowhere near set up for production, so for the build, do this. I definitely do not use the default settings for production if you guys want to. Okay, set this to true. Strict, set that to true. At the comma here. Okay, cool. That should be it. And in our package.json, we don't need to do anything with this tsconfig, but what we want to do is on our scripts, we want to set up concurrently. So we want to have a server script, And this will be nodemon app.ts, and then we want to have a client script which will be cding out of server and cding into client, and then running npm run start. And then we'll have a dev script which will be concurrently. So this will be npm run server, and then npm run client. Cool. So back to our app.ts, we're going to import Multer from Multer. All right. So let's create our server. Let's create our Express method. So we're going to do app equal to Express. And then we'll do app.listen. And then we'll do 5,000. Server is running. Okay. And then we're going to say app.use cores. So now let's do npm run dev. Okay, cool. So the server is running. We don't have any routes set up yet. And what we're going to do for the Multer is we're going to have const upload equal to Multer. All right. And then this will be in middleware in our routes. I'm just going to keep our routes in this one. We're just going to have one for this project anyways. Obviously, you don't want to overload this file, so I would probably keep it separate, but it's okay for this. We're going to have a post. Let's call this upload file. Okay, and I will explain how this Multer works. So if you see here, these are methods that you need to call, and you need to, tell it what it is. So are you expecting a single file, an array of files, certain just fields, no files at all? So in each route that you set up, you need to explicitly set this now. Okay, so let's say in our case, we have a file key that we're sending, right? And then of course here we'll have the method, which will have the request response. So now let's say we had get, something like this. We would need to mention here none, so that if the user tries to upload any files through this route, there would be an error thrown here. So that's one added security that we need to add now that we're using this Multer library. So now let's set up our MVC type directory. So let's have our controllers, service. I'm going to rename this to controller. Controllers, I guess, is fine. And then repository layer. All right. In our controller, we're just going to have one called file upload. Let's call this file controller. And in the file controller, what we're going to do is set up a class. So we're going to import Express here so that we can use its types. And we're going to create this class called file controller. And we're going to call this method here get instance. And this will return the file controller. Let's do export default file controller. And this is all syntactic sugar because in the backend for Node, this will get, of course, when you build it, it will be using like module.exports and stuff like that. But because we have TypeScript here, we're able to use this export default. And here, we're not going to export the file controller class. We're going to export this. We're going to call the method, and this will return us the instance. We're going to create this instance, which will be either null or the file controller. Set it to null. And we're going to check here if instance is equal to null. Set the instance to new file controller, and then return instance, and then return an instance otherwise. Now let's create an async method for our route. It's going to be called upload file, and this is going to take in a request, which will be of type express.request, and then response of type response. Cool. Let's create our traditional try catch block. And then we'll work with that. Alrighty. So, whoops. Now, here, I'm going to import the controller. So, it's just going to be a simple import. Let's do that here. Import file controller from controllers file controller. And then here we will say dot upload file, and that's it. That is why I love using TypeScript, because we can actually see the methods that belong to the classes. It's great. Okay. So what are we going to do now in our controller? Let's, before we start working on this logic, let's make sure that this actually works, this endpoint. Let's do this simply. Console.log request. Inside request, we will have a file, a property. That's what we need. And then for now, we'll just do response.json success set to true. And then here, we'll do response.json success set to false. So now let's go back to the client side. Let's go inside of our file service. Let's add it in the route. So I believe it's going to be HTTP localhost port 5000 upload file. All right. No guarantees that it'll work the first time, but let's give it a try. All right, so let's okay, let's see, first of all, is it even being called from the component? Nope. File service dot upload file. All right, let's give that a try now. Cool. It is working. So if you guys see here, what Multer provides for us is the field. So the field name is file, the original file name, the encoding, the MIME type, and then the buffer. So this is actually what the most important part is, especially because this is the file, the raw file contents that we need, and then the size of the file. So as we did the validations for the front end, we need to do the same thing for the back end. Now, I had this thought while developing this. This code will be the exact same. I wonder if we could keep a common, I don't know if we can actually do this. If you guys know, let me know. If we can keep this code in a common that can be used both for client and server, because the validations are exactly the same. The code will be the same. Just kind of curious on that, but for now, I'm just gonna honestly, let's see what the best way to do this. I'm gonna reveal this in the File Explorer. Come in here, go into the source, copy this folder, go back to server, Did it copy the, cool. It copied that, and now I want to also copy this service that I created. I don't want to rewrite this, so file, validator service, just to save time. Put that in this. Okay. So we have the validators in the file validator service. So in the controller, what we can do is same thing. Let's import this. File validator service. Sorry, this is going to be an object. Sorry, not validators, but service. Whoops. File validator service. Let's import the file validators. Okay. So let's do this. Validate. Sorry. So let's create a valid file size variable. Await the validate file size. And then we're going to pass in. So let's do this. Let's create a variable called file and set it to request.file so that we don't always have to access the request object. So it would be request.size here. Okay, and then we also create another variable called valid file type await validate file type file. So in order to get the extension here, one thing we can use that's built into Node.js is the path. And if you see here, this extension name will return this for us. Now, one second, let me see how I set up my file types. So, oh yeah, here. Now this returns a dot. Just because I'm lazy, I'm just gonna add in dots here. I would have liked to keep it consistent, probably, but it's okay. The server side does not care about what this front end does. It needs to validate, what the best way possible. So instead of writing our own method, I like using this built-in method here. So what we can do, import path from path. And then we can say path dot extension name file dot let's see, file dot original name. Cool. So now if valid file type dot is valid and sorry, so there should be and here, it should be or. If either one of these are false, we're not going to do anything else with it. We're going to return valid, valid file size. What we're going to do is return response.status, and this would be a status of, I'm going to set it to 400 here, which is a bad request. Okay. Success, false, and then I would do message as invalid request. Cool. Validations are done. That was quick. Now we need to talk about our service, which is for the file upload. So I'm going to call this file upload service. And let's see what that looks like. This is the fun part. This is where we actually get to do the uploading and saving to the backend. So we'll create this class, create a constructor, create a private method. I'm going to call the user express namespace, and then set this to multer.file. Okay. Same thing here. This dot file is equal to file. So what I'm going to do now is create a couple methods that we need. So first thing is, when we get the file, we want to create a unique file name for it. Not async. It's going to be a private method called create unique file name. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use UUID. If you guys have something else in mind, do let me know. I'm curious about that. UUID v4 from UUID. And what we'll do here, so this is going to return, we're going to use template string. We're going to create the the UUID here. So this will be the first thing we add, UUID v4, just a function. And after that, what we're going to do is do underscore. We're going to create a timestamp. I know UUID is supposed to be, says it's unique, but just to give it that extra, assurance, we will create a timestamp called new date, because what will happen is when we use a file stream, if the file name is exactly the same, it will overwrite the file, and we definitely do not want that. That would be bad. So we're going to use this toISO string, and let's see what this, I'll show you guys what this looks like real fast. So new date dot to dot to ISO string. So it looks like this. Now I don't want any of these dashes, colons, or Z or T or anything like that. So one thing we can do is use the replace method, use some regular expression, and replace it with an empty string. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to look for these. I'm going to tell it to look for these. So dash, colon, period, T, and Z. So I want it to look like this. Cool. Okay, so we'll have the same thing. Alrighty. So now that the timestamp is created, we also need to have the file extension at the end. Okay, so we do have the file name. Let's grab the file extension. So I'm going to also import path from path here. And what we can do, I'm pretty sure we're going to need the file extension in multiple places. So let's just create a method here, get file extension. Return path dot extension name, this dot file dot original name. Cool. So that this can just be reused multiple places that are needed. So timestamp. And then at the end we will have, so it returns a dot with the extension name. So we're just going to do this dot get extension, and that's it. So this will return us a unique file name. Okay. And then what we want to do now is create a method will be an async method called create file upload. This will be a promise. So this will literally just return a true or false to see if the file was uploaded or not. Okay, so we're going to do a couple things in here. So we need to talk about the DB structure and how we're going to save this. So if you see here, I have this table here. If you guys want to create this and copy this, we have the file ID, file name, we have the unique file name, the file size, and file extension. Why I'm storing these files, you never know when we might need these for what use case, so I just went ahead and added them. It doesn't hurt. And this is what it would look like as a test. We want to keep the original file name. Let's say, we provide a link to the user. We don't actually want to store this. This is just confusing, and we don't want to expose this unique file name really. We want to just have this original file name as a link so the user can click on it and download. And we'll have the file ID. The reason why I have this file ID is in another tutorial, we're going to implement a chunk, uploading a file in chunks. What if the file size is greater than 20 MB? I want to show you guys how we can work with that. So that'll be another project, but I just want to set that up for the future project. So with that being said, let's write the methods for saving to the DB. Okay, so I'm just going to return true for now. In our repository, before we get to the repository, we need to create the db.ts file. Okay, and we also need to create a .env file. I don't know about you guys, but I get tired of having to look up my server settings every time. So what I did is I use Notion a lot. I don't know if you guys do too or not, but I really recommend this. I've saved all my settings in here and what I would need. So this is what I would need for the the .env. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it here. I'd recommend you guys do the same too. Just don't want to keep repeating our process, it just makes it easier. And then db.ts, I also did the same. I just copied, it's just the same old code. Especially if you watch my other tutorials, we do the same thing. I just want to save some time. And now what we're going to do here is we don't need the require. We're going to do an import. So we're going to do an import of MySQL from MySQL. And then let's see how this import works for .env. I'm not sure. Okay, one second. Let's see. So .env. Okay, hopefully that works. And then we can do this. We can do export default connection. Perfect. All right. So we have that set up, the DB set up, and now we're going to include this in our repository. So yeah, I hope you guys were able to follow along with that. If you need to set this up from scratch, do just pause the video and then add it in. Okay, the repo file, let's call this file repo.ts. Let's do import connection from DB. Okay, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to create a model folder, call it models, and we will call this file, let's call this uploaded file. This will represent our DB table structure basically. And we're going to just export this interface. Let's call this uploaded file. Original file name, string, unique file name, and file size, file extension, and then the buffer, which this won't actually be stored in the DB, but we will need it to pass into our, when we write the file stream, when we create the file in our backend. And then let's just do an export on this. Okay, cool. Now we're gonna just simply import this uploaded file from models, uploaded file. All right, let's create the class called file repo, grab the instance. We're just gonna do the same thing here. Instance created, create the file repo, return instance. Otherwise, we will just return the instance. All right. So what we're going to do now is create a method called create file record. You can call it whatever you want. You can say create file. I would just say keep it consistent. That's all. With the verb is like create, upload, whatever. Yeah. I just want to call it create. And let's do this repo. And then we're just going to get the file, and then this will be of the uploaded file model. We'll do a try catch block. Console.log the error. So this will return a insert ID basically. So we would say promise number. All right, so we will do return await new promise, resolve reject, connection dot query. Oh, did I spell connection wrong? Yeah, that's why I imported it again. Connection dot query. Okay, we're gonna do insert into uploaded file. We're gonna have, okay, so let's see what we're gonna insert. We don't, file ID will be incremented each time, so we'll have the file name, unique file name, file size, and I believe file extension, values, and then have 4 question marks. Okay, and then pass them all in this array. So we would do file dot original file name, unique file name, dot file size, and then file extension. Results. So we would have the results here. So we would say if error, console.log this error message, and reject and send it 0. And then we'll resolve it with results.insert ID. Cool. This insert ID will be a key component in whenever we, try to implement uploading a file in chunks. Alrighty. This should be it. That was pretty easy. Now in our service, what we need to do is let's create a private method for now. Let's call this create file record. This will return, this will need to be async. Return a promise of type number, or type of promise. Okay, so let's import the repo. And one mistake I did here that I believe I am catching is we need to return get instance. So we're going to do file repo from repository file repo. All right, let's do that. And since we're already getting the instance of the class, we'll do camel case, and then we'll do return await file repo, create file record, send in the file. So this will need to provide a file of type uploaded file. Alrighty, so we will create that here. You know, we can either create that here, or what we can do, expect or just build it in this one, so that this function doesn't really have to worry about it, can just call it directly, because we're just getting the details from here anyways. So all right, let's give that a try. So it already knows that it's expecting of a uploaded file interface. So we'll do original file name, this.file original name, unique file name, which will be, let's see here. Do we need this unique file name anywhere else? Yes, we'll need it in multiple places. So what I'll do is I'll pass that here. That is the only thing that we will need. So let's call this variable unique file name create unique file name. Pass that in here. All right, cool. And then what else do we need? File size. File extension. And then so we'll say this.get file extension. And then now the uploaded file, now that I think about it, we should not have, I added this buffer, it shouldn't be there. It should follow what exactly is needed to be inserted. Yeah. I wonder if we should even keep file ID here. And just not use it, because whenever we retrieve it, I wonder if we can reuse it, but we'll worry about that another time, or it may never even come back to it. All right, so now this will get created. So I've done a lot of coding and not testing, so I want to test this now. What we're going to do here is say if file ID is greater than if it's for some reason equal to 0, return false. Otherwise we'll return true. And we can simplify this actually by saying file ID is greater than 0, we'll return a Boolean. Cool. Now we aren't actually saving the file in our backend yet. We're literally just saving it to the database. Okay, so we don't have any actual file yet. Now let's do this. I'm going to do a delete of whatever I have from here, just so that we can start fresh. whoops, okay. So now let's refresh this and let's choose a file. Okay, so I know oh, well, first of all, I'm not even calling the service here. Let's do that. Let's import the file upload service from service, file upload service. Not even exporting it. File upload service dot get instance. No, I didn't even create that. File upload service. And I'm tired of rewriting this code, so I'm just going to copy it. What this allows us to do is just create a singleton of this class instead of having to, well, okay, sorry guys. There is a specific reason why I don't want to create a singleton of this. Because every time we initialize this object, we want to, work with the object that they're given us. So this has a constructor, so it wouldn't make sense to actually return the instance because we don't have the file yet. So that's the reason why we're keeping this like that. So file upload service, we'll create a new instance of it here. So I'm gonna keep this capital because it's a class that we're importing. We'll call this file upload service, create the new instance of it, pass in the file, and then what we'll do here is say create file upload. Oh, one thing we can do is in the file controller, instead of importing the path here, since we're already have the path in here, we can make this a static method. Oh, but yeah. No, let's keep it as is. We will create this. Sorry, I did not mean to create it here. We will create this instance only if the files are validated. So we'll create the file record. And I'm going to keep this private for now because the controller already has the path being imported, so I don't want to make it public. Okay, so create file upload. This will return a file ID. We're going to await this. And cool. So what we're going to do here is say if file ID for some reason is equal to 0, that means something went wrong. And what we'll do is response.json. Let's do the status of 500 internal server error. Now we can say error uploading file. So I'm trying to keep these messages as UI friendly so that in the UI we can just directly use this key. Otherwise it's kind of pointless. Error uploading file to even include them. And what is this? The condition will always return false since it's a type of Boolean. I see. Well, I want to return a number here and not Boolean. So what does it not like here? Cannot find name path. Okay, let me just save it. Cool, it's working. Okay, so let's try that again. And if what we'll do is return the file ID. if it's successful. Now we will refresh this. All right, so let's see. No errors. All right, guys, it stored the value in the DB. We got lucky there. We didn't have any errors on our first try. So we have the file ID, file name. Yep, correct file name. The unique file name, as you can see here. File size. This is stored in bytes, by the way, and I left a comment in here. And then file extension. Perfect, perfect. So now let's do the last bit. In our file service, we want to now create the file and store it here in our server side. So you can call it whatever directory you want, but I'm just going to call it image. And what I'm going to do now, so we have file record. I'm going to keep this above here. I want to keep the dependent methods as close as possible and in order. Just something I got from clean code. And now we will create a method called write to file stream. I think that probably is the best name. All right, and we're going to import the file stream from FS. I could call it FS, but I would just want to be explicit. Okay. Let's just call it FS. We'll call the variable file stream. We will need the we will need the unique file name. That's all. Unique file name. And we're going to create a file stream here. We're going to call this method create write stream. And what this will take is the file path that we want to write it to. So I'm going to say underscore underscore dir name, and I'm going to just use template strings here. And this will go into image. Okay, see, get out of the current directory and go into image. And then we're going to pass in the unique file name. And this should be dir name like this. Cool. So now what we're going to do is say file stream dot write. Now we have that buffer that we need to pass here. And then we need to tell it that it's going to be of type base64. I believe that's what it is. So this is useful for writing in chunks as well. So what the buffer can be chunks of a file and not the complete file. And we'll get to that in another tutorial. That's my next plan. I'll explain that more in the end of the video. So once the file stream has written this buffer, we will say file stream dot end. Now hopefully nothing should go wrong here, but maybe, I don't know if we should add more a better, error handling here. Let me know your guys' thoughts on if you guys have experience with this, on how to handle errors. We could definitely add some logging here for sure. So file stream. I believe there's an event handler that we can, oh, whoops. I want to just watch so I just want the documentation. Let's do FS file system and then write I'm just quickly looking for the write stream. Create write stream. Okay, one second, let me see. If I'm not mistaken, what we can do here is file stream dot on, and we can do, let's do end? No, not end. Finish. So we have a bunch of event handlers that we have here. Let's do close. And let's see. Console.log. File stream has been closed. And I also want to add one more. Dot error. And then for now we can just have, I don't know if any parameters get passed, like error messages. We need to research on that. But we can have a log saying file error occurred while writing to stream. Cool. So now, write to file stream. This will be called here. This dot write to file stream, and we're going to pass the unique file name. Awesome, guys. And I guess we'll just keep it in this order. Now, shall we give this a try? Alright, so I'm going to refresh this, close out of this. I'm going to upload this image. File stream has been closed. Okay, so there was no error. And one thing I'm going to do in the controller is let's get rid of this console.log. And now let's, for the moment of truth, let's see if it actually got uploaded. Voila, it did get uploaded. And this is a picture of one of my dogs. So it is working, guys. This is awesome. And let's just make sure that it's uploaded in the, yep, DB. And we can just simply quickly check. We can quickly check, simply quickly. We can so yep, the unique file name is the correct one. All right, I'm going to now, let's try a document if I have one. I think I have one in my Google Drive and it's just my resume. Okay, not this one. What is this portfolio? Let's try this. Okay, cool. So that got created. And yeah, it's just a bunch of gibberish because I probably need an extension of, some kind of way to read this in VS Code. But it looks like it did get created, uploaded. And I'm going to do one thing here. Let's get rid of this console.log for the close because we don't need to log that every time. And one last thing now is, now once the user has uploaded to the file successfully or did not get successfully added, let's add a toast. I think that's a really good way of adding some feedback here. And I love the way Chakra UI has implemented the toast. It's just like a hook that we can use. And we don't need to create a component for it. So what we can do is let me see the file that we need to add it to. It's going to be in the file upload component. And we're going to just add it here. We do need to add some stuff to the upload file because we're technically always returning true. So what we need to do here, let's convert this to JSON. Upload response.json. And then we will return. So we'll say if response.json.success is false, then we would return success false, and then message response JSON message. Cool. And we wouldn't even have the message here. Yeah, we would. We can do this. We can say uploaded successfully. Okay, cool. So now that's that. And now let's go to the component. All right, so one thing I want to do here, I want to reset this either way, if it's been uploaded successfully or not. It doesn't make sense to kind of keep that value there. Because remember, we're doing an on change. So let's say the user tries to upload it again and it's still there, the value. It's the same value, so then it would actually never trigger this on change event. So yeah, simply just set it back to a string. Now what we're going to do is import this create standalone toast. If you see here, this standalone toast, to create toast from anywhere in your React component. Okay, so I don't have to create a component for this. And what I'm going to do now is create a variable called toast and call this method. And now all I need to do is pass in the parameters. So I can say title, and so we get a response here now. So file upload response equal to await that title is going to be file upload response dot success. So we'll do it conditionally. So if it's successful, we will say file uploaded. Otherwise, we will say upload failed. And then the description, we can say file upload response dot message. And then the status will be, so we have an error and success. So that's all we want to work with. So we would do, oh, spelled this wrong. We want to grab this. Whoa. Copy that, paste that, and then if it's true, have success, otherwise have error. And we'll set the duration for maybe, I don't know, 3,000. I originally had it at 5,000, but we can play with that number. And then is closable as well. And that is it. So let's give that a try. So I'm going to upload a file. Perfect. That looks really good, guys, in my opinion. Everything is working. I would say this was a pretty clean implementation. If there's anything I missed or any errors you guys see, let me know. Do let me know. I'm sure a lot of you guys might have experience with this, or even if you're learning for the first time, let me know if I missed something or if there's a better way to implement this. So guys, that's it for this tutorial. Alright guys, if you made it this far, I really appreciate you, and I would ask you to please consider liking and subscribing this video. I'm trying to get this to 1,000 subscribers and to get this channel monetized, so that would be greatly appreciated. And I wanted to talk about some of the future tutorials on this. So after this, we're going to work on uploading a file that is greater than 20 megabytes and how we can work with that, because we'll need to upload the file in chunks, because the browser usually has limitations on how large of a file or you can upload, and also the server side might set a limit on that as well. So we'll work on that next, and then after that we'll work on, once all of this is done, how do we provide some value to the user. So we want, let's say the user uploaded a file, and then at some point of our project they need to be able to download it. So I'll show you guys how you can set that file as a link, and then how the user can download that file. So yeah, those are the next two tutorials that I plan. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.